If you want to beat the crowds.
If you want to beat the long lines.
At Universal, do this. Hey, what's going on everybody? Rick and Nikki here.
Hello.
And we are actually here at Universal just to have some fun for ourselves. Nikki's on spring break, but we thought while we were here, we would give you some of our tips and tricks on how to beat the crowds, how to beat the long lines when you're visiting. It's spring break. You're at Islands of Adventure. What's the first thing you want to do, Nikki?
Velocicoaster, of course.
Velocicoaster it is. And along the way, we'll give you some advice on how to beat the long lines at Universal. The first thing we would advise to beat the crowds, to beat the long lines, would be to make sure you're in the park the first 2 hours of the park day. And to that regard, it would be best, but not totally necessary, if you were able to get into the park for early park admission, which includes who, Nikki?
Those that have annual passes and those who are staying at a Universal Orlando resort.
It seems like the crowds and the lines are at their lowest at the beginning of the park day. You know, a lot of people are on vacation, and what do they like to do? Sleep in. I don't blame them for that. And then there's another group of people who just likes to take things slower on vacation. So they'll get up just a little later, they'll go to a nice breakfast, have a coffee, and while they're working on their second cup of coffee, you're in line, a short line, for the Velocicoaster. And speaking of the Velocicoaster, we're going on right now. Well, that was better than a second cup of coffee. Where to next, Nikki?
Hagrid's?
Hagrid's? Okay. So our first bit of advice to beat the long lines was to show up at the park and ride things the first 2 hours of the park day. Our second piece of advice is kind of the opposite of that. Be in the park the last 2 hours of the park day for rides. By the last 2 hours, it seems like most of the crowd's tired, they're hungry, they want to go back to the hotel, they want to go eat dinner, so the lines thin out. I think I actually did a video once where I tested express passes versus riding the rides the last 2 hours of the park day, and riding the last 2 hours of the park day is just as good, at least in my test, as express passes. You okay there? You look a little windblown.
It's windy on those fast rides.
Remember that Universal has a no recording on roller coasters policy. There's a few rides that we can record on though. But now that we've done 2 roller coasters, I do need to settle down a bit. You know? And as we settle down and take what, the Hogwarts Express?
Yeah.
Over to Studios, we'll give you another little piece of advice on how to beat the long lines. Well, I don't know if this is so much advice on how to beat the lines and the crowds, but we just advise you the first 2 hours of the park day and the last 2 hours of the park day. What are you going to do in between? Well, in between is a good time to see the shows. There's not a lot of shows here at Islands of Adventure. You basically have the Wizarding World with the Tri-Wizard Tournament and then the Frog Choir. But at Studios, the middle part of the day would be a good time to see all the shows, such as the Born Stuntacular,
The Horror and Makeup Show,
the Pets on Location show,
Celestino Warbeck and the Banshees,
Tale of the Three Brothers,
and Ollivanders.
the Blues Brothers, and Marilyn and the Diamond Bellas.
Another good thing to do is eat at odd times, so eat lunch a little bit earlier or a little bit later to avoid the big lunch rush.
Probably a little earlier because you got to the park early, so you're on an early track anyway. So you can be some of the first people in line for the food. Ah, there we go. That's the way to beat a line. we've arrived in London. What do you want to do?
Escape from Gringotts.
Ooh, that works out well because one of our tips we use all the time for Escape from Gringotts. And what is it that we like to utilize at Gringotts like 99% of the time, Nikki?
Single rider.
Single rider line. That's a very good way to beat the lines at Universal. Now the thing with single rider lines, most of the rides do have them. You will be separated from your party most of the time. We have been lucky enough a few times where we've gone single rider and they put us in the same cart, but that's not guaranteed. And a good rule of thumb would be, at worst, it will save you half the time. For example, if the wait time is 60 minutes, you'll get through single rider in 30, but a lot of the times it's way, way quicker to do single rider line. Just a small word of warning when it comes to utilizing the single rider line queue, you will miss out on some of the cool visuals that the regular queue has.
A wild cart ride awaits you. Be warned, it is not for everyone. Muggles might describe the journey to the vaults as a high-speed roller coaster ride with sudden and dramatic acceleration, climbing, stopping and diving.
So, just getting off of Gringotts, the single rider line trick worked again. The listed wait time was 35. We did it like a walk-up.
Yes, exactly. Now that one can be a little bit tricky. If you notice that the line is kind of down the staircase, because like you have to walk up a big old winding staircase, if you notice it's at the bottom of the staircase, it's a little iffy whether you want to do it or not, whether it's going to actually be better. Yeah, so most of the time, single rider, if you do it first thing in the morning too, is better than if you try to do it later in the afternoon.
We have a couple more caveats when it comes to the single rider lines.
Yes.
The single rider line for Velocicoaster doesn't seem to really be a good cheat.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get lucky, but most of the time it runs about the same time you would be in line.
Yeah. And while most of the attractions do have single rider lines, they don't always open them up.
Right, exactly. That's true.
So, but Gringotts is one that seems to be always open, but some like Spider-Man and the one for Kong, it all depends. If the line gets long, then they will open it up. So just keep that in mind too, that they might not always be open 100% of the time. That's right. But if they are open, it's a good hack.
It is.
Oh, one more thing about the single rider line. Well, sort of. It's kind of a tangent. There is a drink at Chez Alcatraz in honor of the single riders.
Oh, that's right. And it's so good. It's my favorite. Honestly, it is. It's my favorite.
It's a secret menu item, not on the menu. You got to ask for it. And we did do a video for single riders because one of our viewers wrote a song about the single riders line.
And it's perfect. It's so perfect.
I will either just put a link to it or maybe I'll just tag it on to the end of this video.
It's so good.
I'll decide when I'm editing. Now, here is a way to beat the lines. I'm hesitant to bring it up because it does cost money, but it is a way to beat the long lines. That would be purchasing the express passes. Now, the prices of these express passes will vary depending on how busy it is. The busier it is, the more costly the express passes will be. In the slow season, they don't cost as much because they're not needed as much. But there is another way to get express passes rather than purchasing them.
Yes, staying at a premier Universal Orlando Resort hotel will get you express passes as well.
Your hotel key acts as the express pass, and those hotels would be the Hard Rock, Portofino Bay, and Royal Pacific. Now, those hotels do cost more per night, but I think people have done the math, and it's better just to stay at the hotel rather than purchasing the express passes along with your hotel.
Especially if you have a larger party. You can also start using them the day you check in.
And here's a little something I almost forgot about. Now, this works very well if you only plan on visiting Universal a couple days, a couple nights.
Right.
That would be to come via the Orlando Informer Meetup. Now, that is a separately ticketed event. There's a link to it in the description box. But with your price of admission, you get unlimited food and beverage.
Right.
non-alcoholic beverage, and the wait times are really short.
Yes, exactly.
So like I said, I think that works best if it's just going to be like a 2-day visit.
Oh, for sure.
So anyway, go check that out. There's a link in the description box to learn more about that. But as far as these tips and tricks are concerned, if you apply some of these, I'm pretty sure, you know, you're going to have a better experience and avoid some of those crowds and long lines. And with all that being said,
don't miss the magic, don't miss the fun.
see you next time.
His name is Rick, her name is Nikki, showing how theme parks are done. Don't miss the magic, don't miss the fun. Hit subscribe.